There is a phrase that horse people often use when discussing controversial moments in the sport. Whenever a scandal emerges, whenever a training video goes viral, whenever a welfare debate erupts across social media, someone inevitably asks the same question. Did they actually break any rules? It's a reasonable question. After all, organized sport depends on rules. Every competition, every championship, every governing body, and every disciplinary system is built upon them. Rules establish boundaries. Rules determine penalties. Rules tell competitors what is permitted and what is prohibited. Without rules, organized competition would be impossible. But over the past decade, equestrian sport has repeatedly found itself confronting a different type of question. A question that cannot always be answered by opening a rulebook and searching for the relevant section. The question is not whether something was legal. The question is whether it was right. That distinction may seem subtle at first, but it lies at the heart of some of the biggest challenges facing horse sport today. Recently, an article published in the Plaid Horse argued that the United States Equestrian Federation should consider establishing an Equestrian Ethics Consultation Committee. The proposal is not focused on creating another disciplinary panel or expanding existing enforcement powers. Instead, it suggests creating a body dedicated to examining ethical concerns that arise in situations where regulations alone may not provide adequate guidance. On the surface, that may sound like a relatively minor governance proposal, yet the more closely one examines the idea, the more it begins to feel like part of a much larger conversation that has been unfolding throughout the equestrian world for years. Because whether people realize it or not, horse sport is currently experiencing a profound shift in how it thinks about responsibility, welfare, and accountability. For generations, many difficult questions could be answered simply by asking whether a particular practice complied with the rules. If the answer was yes, discussion often ended there. Today, however, that approach is becoming increasingly difficult to sustain. Part of the reason is that around the world, equestrian sport has changed dramatically. Only a few decades ago, most training happened beyond the view of the broader public. Competitions were attended primarily by people already involved in the horse industry. Conversations about training methods, equipment choices, and welfare concerns largely remained within equestrian circles. The average person simply had very little access to what happened behind the scenes. That reality no longer exists. Today, virtually every rider, trainer, owner, groom, parent, spectator, and activist carries a smartphone capable of recording high-definition video. A training session that once would have been witnessed by a handful of people can now be viewed by millions around the world. Social media platforms have eliminated many of the barriers that once separated the horse industry from public scrutiny. The consequences of that transformation have been enormous. Practices that were once considered private now frequently become public. Moments that might previously have generated discussion among a few competitors can suddenly become international controversies. More importantly, these discussions are no longer confined to horse people. The audience has expanded, the public is watching, and the public often evaluates equestrian sport through a different lens than the industry itself. When horse people watch a warm-up arena, they may notice technical details related to training, biomechanics, rider effectiveness, or competition preparation. Members of the general public often see something else entirely. They see an animal, they see how that animal appears to be feeling. They evaluate what they observe through their own moral framework. Whether equestrians agree with those conclusions is almost beside the point. Public perception matters. It matters because equestrian sport does not exist in isolation from society. Like every activity involving animals, it depends upon a level of public acceptance, often referred to as social license. Social license is not something that can be purchased or legislated. It is granted by society. It reflects the degree to which the public believes an activity is justified, responsible, and ethically acceptable. For decades, many industries involving animals have discovered what happens when social license begins to erode. Practices that once appeared secure can suddenly come under intense pressure. Public expectations evolve. Cultural attitudes shift. Activities that were rarely questioned can become subjects of fierce debate. Equestrian sport is not immune to those forces. In fact, there is growing evidence that horse sport may be entering a period where social license becomes one of the defining issues of its future. One of the reasons this conversation has become so difficult is that horse welfare itself is often more complicated than people would like to admit. Most horse people genuinely care about their animals. Most riders do not wake up in the morning intending to harm their horses. Most trainers believe they are acting in the best interests of the horse under their care. Yet, sincere intentions do not automatically resolve ethical questions. History provides countless examples of practices that were once considered acceptable, but later came under scrutiny as knowledge evolved. Advances in veterinary medicine, biomechanics, behavioral research, and welfare science have transformed our understanding of horses over time. As that understanding changes, so too do expectations. Methods that were once defended as normal can become controversial. Equipment that was once commonplace can come under criticism. Management practices that were rarely questioned can suddenly face demands for reform. This process is not unique to equestrian sport. It occurs in medicine, agriculture, education, business, and virtually every other field influenced by scientific progress and changing cultural values. The challenge for horse sport is that it must navigate these changes while balancing tradition, competition, economics, and welfare. That is not an easy task. Consider some of the major welfare debates that have shaped the equestrian world during the past 20 years. The discussions surrounding hyperflexion in rollcur and dressage, questions about overuse of horses at elite levels, concerns regarding intensive training methods, debates about equipment, controversies surrounding judging, discussions about breeding priorities, questions about veterinary interventions that may extend competitive careers while potentially creating welfare concerns. Many of these issues have generated passionate disagreement precisely because they occupy a gray area between legality and ethics. People often agree on the facts. They disagree on the implications. One individual may view a practice as an acceptable part of high-performance sport. Another may see the same practice as fundamentally incompatible with horse welfare. The existence of those disagreements does not necessarily indicate bad faith on either side. Instead, it demonstrates the complexity of the questions involved. That complexity is one of the reasons the proposal for an ethics consultation committee is attracting attention. Unlike disciplinary systems, which focus primarily on determining whether rules have been violated, ethical consultation focuses on broader questions. It asks not only what can be done, but what should be done. It examines consequences, it considers competing values, it encourages discussion before controversies become crises. Perhaps most importantly, it acknowledges a reality that many organizations have historically been reluctant to confront. Not every important issue can be solved through regulation alone. Sometimes the hardest questions arise precisely because existing rules do not provide clear answers. And in those moments, ethics become indispensable. The horse, after all, cannot participate in these conversations. The horse cannot attend a federation meeting. They cannot vote on policy changes. The horse cannot post concerns on social media. The horse cannot hire legal representation. Every major decision affecting horses is made by humans. That reality creates an extraordinary responsibility. one that extends far beyond competitive success or regulatory compliance. If equestrian sport is to maintain public trust in the decades ahead, it may need to demonstrate not only that it follows the rules, but that it is actively willing to examine difficult questions about what kind of sport it wants to be. And that is ultimately what makes the proposal discussed in the Plaid Horse so significant. It is not really about creating another committee. It is about acknowledging that the future of horse sport may depend upon its willingness to engage seriously with ethical questions before circumstances force those conversations upon it. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, I am not AI. If you listen closely, you can hear me breathe.